The Rainier Arms Apex Club brings you this episode of the QA. It is the end of the month, which means it is time for the QA. My name is Dave Tim from Guns and Tactics. Thank you guys very much for spending a few minutes with me, checking out this month's episode of the QA. It is February 2020, and usually we do this on the last Monday of the month, but I actually thought we had one more Monday, and it turns out it's February, and it's already the 28th. So I'm going to put this out today, Friday the 28th, and I am actually filming it on the 28th. It's just very early in the morning. So when you wake up, you'll see it, and I'll be sleeping, because that's what I do. Anyways, good turnout. We actually have 9 questions this month. Not quite 10, but 9, and that's okay. So maybe pick it up next time. We'll get to an even 10, but right now we're at 9. If you want to see your question make it on the show, the best way is to email us. And the email address is shown below. It is theqa@gunsandtactics.com. So shoot us an email. Your question could be on the show, like the upcoming questions here. Otherwise, you can leave a comment. Try to do the hashtag the QA. Otherwise, you can leave a comment. I try to get on all the comments I can. Sometimes I do miss some. So the best way is the email address, which is shown below. So I would appreciate that. And yeah, that should about cover the initial how to get on the show type stuff. So let's get on with it. Actually, no, we're not. Quick update, 43,000 subscribers as of February, which is great. We are on our way to 50,000, and we are going to have the 50K giveaway, the 50,000 giveaway. We're trying to work with manufacturers already as far as prizes and stuff like that. So make sure you tell your friends to subscribe. It's going to be one of those 50,000 people. Actually, multiple people are probably going to be winning. So I'm pretty pumped about it. We want to keep growing so we can keep doing cool stuff. And then as far as what we have planned for this year, I do have kind of my show list here, but if there's ideas or suggestions that you guys want to see, let me know. And because we do have 10 questions, we're probably not going to get into a ton of time on all of them, because I don't want to make this video go too ridiculously long. However, a lot of great show ideas came from QA questions. So if I answer your question, but it's not enough and you want me to do a whole video on it, I love getting that feedback, because I'm all about making the content that you guys and gals want to see. So again, for those of you joining me on the road, make sure that your eyes are on the road, but your ears are right here. And sit back and relax, but not too much, because you have to stay alert and stay driving safe. All right, anyways, here we go. First question is from Chris. Dave, love the channel. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Chris, for the kind words. I really do appreciate it. Built a few ARs, Glocks. Really enjoy working on guns, but I want to know what you'd recommend to expand those skills. Any books, DVDs I should check out, work full-time, wouldn't be able to attend a full-blown gunsmithing school. So, Chris, I know it's always tough to attend a full-blown gunsmithing school. I would love to myself. However, what I would recommend is seeing if you have any armorer classes in your area. I'm not sure where you're from. Also, by the way, based on your email address, thank you for your service. I do appreciate that. But anyways, armorer schools. Just start searching for armorer schools. Some of them are taught privately, some of them are taught by the factories, so there's a little bit different restrictions on what classes you might be able to go to, but being you're probably former military, that might give you some in with some of the classes. However, a lot of them are open enrollment, and those are a great way, because usually they're 1 or 2 days. You can go there, you can learn about a specific platform, like a Glock armorer school if you're a GSSF member. You can find an AR armorer school, generally all across the country. And there's 2 to 3 days, and some are better than others, but there's other schools like that. Additionally, if you want to just learn more about kind of gunsmithing or whatever, is see if your local community ed or community college or co-op type program might have any welding or open machine shop or anything like that. I find that I am learning the most when I just learn different skills. I had a gunsmith and a machinist take me on. I was able to apprentice with them, and I learned so much about just doing that I would maybe reach out to some local gun shops or gunsmiths and just say, hey, if I come hang out 4 hours a week or 4 hours every other week, do you have work for me to do? And they might start by having you sweep the floors, because that's what I did. I first showed up and he's like, yeah, I need you to sweep that up, clean that up, clean that up. And I was like, okay. And then he started to give me more and more, and that's where I got a lot of my hands-on experience. And then now I would really love to take a more in-depth machining class. I mean, I have my milling machine, I have an old lathe, but I really want to do more with those. So that's what I'd like to do as well. All right, question number 2 is from Mike. Your Q&A sessions are great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I have an STG58 DSA. The lever is extremely difficult to open, very close tolerances. Any suggestions short of taking it apart and making it push down more easily? I don't know if it matters, but the FAL has a PRS2 stock. Shouldn't matter on the stock unless it's interfering, which it shouldn't be. Maybe try a little bit of lube or a little bit of grease in there. Otherwise, yeah, you might have to take it apart and make sure that something isn't binding up. I know some of the FAL type guns or whatever, sometimes there's just material on material, and because the tolerances are off, it's actually like an interference fit. So you want to make sure there's that. Before you start, taking the Dremel tool, I would really kind of take your time and dry fit things. Take it apart, reassemble with just the lever, making sure it's cycling. We had this question, I want to say, a month or two ago as well. Otherwise, you might have to find an FAL Smith to fit that part and see if there's any fabrication that might need to be made. So, and sometimes with those guns, whether it's an AK, an FAL, stamped guns, sometimes holes are a little bit out of location or out of tolerance, or it just kind of happens. It's one of those things. This is from Ian. This is question number 3. I have a question regarding getting started into competitive shooting. I've been shooting for a few years. I have a bunch of different types of guns. The only problem is I'm finding a new way to keep the firearms experience fun. Currently a college student with way too much free time. Man, what a good problem to have. I seriously wish I had way too much time in my hands. Just shooting at paper targets and steel out in the mountains. Any resources that you know of that could make this easier? Do you have any suggestions? Yes. And then some feedback. Just found the YouTube. Thank you very much. Welcome aboard, Ian, grad student or undergrad student, class of 2020. So congratulations on your upcoming achievement with college. So what I would recommend is finding in your area, see if there is any United States Practical Shooting Association, USPSA, or 3-gun or outlaw type matches, and it could even be IDPA, although I don't enjoy shooting IDPA as much as I like shooting USPSA or 3-gun or action gun, but multi-gun I should say. See if there's classes or events in your area, and then go to those. A good quality training class is great because it gets you doing different things. A lot of times instructors will bring different drills that is more of a challenge to you. Plus, when you're in a group, there is a different dynamic versus shooting alone on your own. When you shoot alone, no matter what, you're the best shooter. That's just how it goes. But even in a class situation, you might not be the best shooter, so it's going to encourage you to do better and see where you're pacing and get to know and network, and then you can also talk to other people about stuff in the area. But then with competitive shooting, yeah, check out other stuff. Now, the downside with competitive shooting is you go there and you're shooting for maybe at best a couple of minutes if you really take your stage time. So you go there for 3-4 hours and you're shooting for 3-4 minutes. So that's kind of the downside, but you get to do some fun stuff, and depending on the match, they might let you shoot more than once with a different gun if you pay a fee or something like that. But yeah, definitely search for that stuff, start to network, and with social media and online groups, try to find maybe a gun owners forum or shooting forum for your regional area, and just kind of say, hey, this is where I'm at, is there anything cool to do? And I'm sure you'll be able to find something. This one is from Mike. He has a Smith & Wesson M36 nickel-plated 2-inch revolver, and he's wanting to put a spring kit in it to smooth up the action, lessen the trigger pull a bit. What spring set would you recommend? It's going to be a CCW gun. So I'd be a little cautious of putting in like a super modified spring set that would lighten things up, because you don't want to have light strikes. You want to make sure that reliability is still there. So revolvers, I would recommend looking at Wilson. They make some great springs. Wolf with 2 Fs. With 2 Fs. WOLFF. You can tell it's the end of the night for me. I've been up for a long time, so I'm filming this at 3 a.m. my time. 2 Fs. Wolf springs makes great springs. And then you can also, I thought Apex at one point was doing some revolver springs. I'm not sure if they are or not. We might have to check into that one. But between Wilson and Wolf, you have some great options there. And then also, it might not hurt to have a revolver smith open it up a little bit and just make sure that there's no burrs or edges or anything like that. And they might be able to polish and smooth out. And that actually really can enhance how a revolver feels without actually lightening up anything that much. But it works out really well. So the perception, the smoothness, everything like that is all improved. So that is an option there. All right, we have 5 questions left. So I'll answer one. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to answer one more, because this next question is actually very close to the last question. I'm going to answer those 2 questions at once. It's going to be a 2-for-1 special. But before we talk about the 2-for-1 special, let's give a shout out to Rainier Arms Apex Club. If you guys like buying the coolest, newest gear at discounted prices, at free ground shipping, then you got to get on board with the Rainier Arms Apex Club. And they are supplying the prize for this month's winner, so thank you to them. But they have their new distribution facility in the Midwest, so shipping is much faster, coast to coast. And they offer all the cool stuff, AR stuff, handgun stuff, precision rifle stuff. They're continually growing. They're adding tons of new products every week, and they give Apex Club members a discount on all of it and free ground shipping, plus exclusive early access to a lot of cool stuff. For a low price of just under $100 a year, you get all the amazing Prime benefits with all of your warehouse exclusive members only pricing. What is not to love? The Rainier Arms Apex Club. Make sure you check it out. Low price of just under $100, free ground shipping, discounts, exclusive access. Rainier Arms, thank you very much for your support of the show. All right, this one is number 5, and ironically, question number 9 is also pretty much the same question. Now, I put each of you in for the drawing, so don't worry, you both will be covered. So question number 5 is from Ben. Is there different preferred ammo for self-defense in pistol-length carbines versus 16-inch, talking 223 ARs? And then question number 9 is from Salvatore. Regarding a 10.5-inch AR chambered in 5.56, what's your preferred bullet weight for defensive purposes? Lighter for increased velocity or heavier due to decreased velocity, shorter barrel? I've heard arguments. So question number 5 and question number 9, all at the same time. Biggest thing with shorter barrels is you have reduced velocity. So yes, bullet weight does make a difference, but the biggest factor with these ARs is we have reduced velocity, which means the bullet is going slower, which for some ammunitions means that when it impacts the target, it does not have enough velocity to expand or perform as it should. Some rounds, like Federal's 62 grain bonded, for example, which is a great round. It's an all-around great round for self-defense, duty use, even hunting, which is their fusion line. It's the same bullet, that bonded round. Works great out of a 14-inch, 16-inch barrel out to 223 distances. When you start to get those shorter barrels, the velocity slows down, and after 7,500 yards, that bullet is not necessarily going to perform the same as it would at a higher velocity. So therefore, we start to look at rounds. Right now, my preferred short barrel round, and in some ways kind of all-around patrol rifle self-defense round, is the Gold Dot 75 grain, that from Speer. And it was designed for short barrel rifles. So it's designed to expand reliably at those slower velocities of short barrel rifles. Now, depending on what length pistol you have, Ben, I want to say, because I know from contact, you have like a 10.5 or 11.5 inch gun. If you have a shorter gun, like 8-inch, it can get a little bit more interesting because you have that shorter velocity and you might not have that better ballistic performance. But for 10.5, 11.5, 12-inch guns, I like the 75 grain Gold Dot. I shot it in gel, I shot it through cars, I shot it through barriers into gel, and could actually see how it performed. Now granted, I had a little bit of insider info from Johan from Federal, which, speaking of which, right up here on YouTube, we did a 2-part video interview series with Johan from Federal ATK. Guy is truly a ballistics expert. This video that I pointed to is an amazing source of information, and unfortunately it's not as flashy as maybe some people like because it doesn't get as many views, but it's an awesome video series. I highly suggest checking it out because there's a lot of knowledge in there. And when I need a ballistics expert, I call Johan. And he recommended the 75 grain Gold Dot, and he put his money where his mouth is. We shot it a bunch of stuff through vehicles, like I said, and it performed really well. So that's what I personally have. Whether it be a patrol round, a defensive round, or whatever, I like it. Now, if I was shooting 18-inch barrel or beyond, I wouldn't necessarily shoot it because there could be some potential issues with the jacket separating at higher velocities, but sometimes things happen. But for the question at hand, 75 grain Speer Gold Dot is a phenomenal short barrel round. Hornady also makes a really good one. Those are probably the two that I would look at for short barrel pistol length type situations. All right, number 6. This is from Trevor. Now that many law enforcement agencies are adopting them, I really believe they're becoming reliable and enough to consider a red dot on my pistol for EDC. But I'm still cheap. Are there any budget-friendly options that are still going to perform as well as the big names? Is Holosun or some other name worth looking at? Yes. So I did a first look video on the new Holosun 509, so I'll put a link to that there. Otherwise, you can go to the webpage and search for Holosun, which is a higher-end optic. However, some of Holosun's other optics, the non-titanium versions, actually follow, 507 follows the RMR footprint. So if you had your slide milled for the Trijicon RMR, which I would say in reality is the gold standard of pistol red dots right now. What's nice with that RMR cut is it fits the RMR itself, which is arguably the most rugged and reliable pistol red dot on the market. It also fits the SRO, which I would argue is the most pleasant to shoot pistol red dot. And then it fits the Holosun for a lower budget alternative. And there's going to be a new one from Sun Optics that's also RMR footprint as well. So you do have some budget options for under $200 to kind of get your feet wet. Now, if you have an MOS type gun or an optics ready type gun, you can just swap out plates. You could look at something from Vortex. You could look at some of the Burrises, things like that. But I think bang for the buck right now, the Holosuns are probably what I would do if you're just looking to get your feet wet. Pick up a 507, an older model, maybe a used model or a demo or something like that, and really kind of dive in and build those fundamentals. And then if you really like it, you can add an RMR, an SRO, whatever in the future. So, but yeah, I agree. I really do think the future is here. The downside with red dots is that once you get to like them, I want a red dot on all my guns. I remember my first gun was a Glock 34 that I put an RMR on, and that was my first exposure to red dots. And it's been a few years now, probably 3 or 4 years now that I started shooting that. And man, once you get that, it's awesome. So now I have, I have a few. I have an RMR on my another Glock. I have a Shield. I have an SRO. I have the Holosun. So yeah, I've probably got 5 or 6 guns with red dots on them, and I want to put them on everything because once you realize that you have that target focus, and you see all of your input and all of your movement because you get that feedback with the dot, it does make you a better shooter. I want a red dot on everything, which gets expensive. So yeah, I hear you. I hear you. It's tough being cheap, but just do it. You're not going to regret it. Number 7 is from Bob. Bob, I believe you've asked a few questions, so thank you very much for tuning back in. I recently had a friend ask me to look into why it was stovepiping, doesn't say what type of gun. Discovered that his method of cleaning was to shoot it with Remington gun oil. Needless to say, it completely dismantled. Needed to be completely dismantled. I also spent time teaching him how to properly clean it. For something this excessive, what methods do you use to clean? Soaking, ultrasonic, etc. I love ultrasonic cleaning. It is a degreaser, so it takes away any good lube or protectant or anything like that. So there is a downside. You have to make sure you kind of recoat the gun so it doesn't rust. But ultrasonic cleaning does do a really good job of removing some gunk. You can literally see it kind of float and cloud away. And then it also does a great job at loosening up stuff. So you can just take your toothbrush, your swab, your brush, whatever, and kind of really then do a nice job of cleaning. The downside again with ultrasonic, not to mention the degreasing, is it also gets in all those nooks and crannies and it just kind of loosens and radiates the gunk. So if you don't clean it out of those nooks and crannies, that stuff is still there, plus you have to dry it out. So that's kind of the downside. Soaking in like Slip 2000's Carbon Killer works really good for like bolt carrier groups, things like that as well. And that again kind of helps soften that gunk so it's easily removable. So that's a great solution. Otherwise, solvent of your choice. I really like Slip products. I use their 725, I use their lubes, their Carbon Killers, their copper solvent. Good stiff brush, old toothbrush. Go to the dollar store and get some, stiff toothbrushes and just start going to town. Cotton swabs, old rags, t-shirts, whatever it might be. And you're just gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way, and then just make sure you apply something like a rust preventative or a rust protector, corrosion inhibitor, rust preventer, metal protector. I'm telling you guys, 3:30 in the morning. And then protect the metal and then lubricate accordingly. But that's what I would look at. Number 8, and actually the last question because we already answered number 9. This is from Jacob. I'm a patrol officer from a larger city in northern Minnesota. Well, you're darn tootin', you betcha. Welcome to the show. We have a fairly open policy on what we can use. I've been doing some research. Information's limited. What are your thoughts on 300 Blackout for a patrol rifle, non-subsonic, and an SBR? Do you discourage the use of an aftermarket trigger group when it comes to duty use? First question, 300 Blackout is a great round, knowing that it has limitations. Now, the 300 Blackout in an SBR is going to perform better than a 223 in an SBR because it's a larger bullet, has more weight, and especially if you're non-subsonic, you can have some pretty good ballistic performance. The downside with 300 Blackout is it's a little bit more expensive. So are you going to train with it as much? Are you going to get out and shoot as much with that particular gun? And the answer is it would be more cost effective to shoot with a 223. So the answer is what you make it is. I'm trying to give you factors, but are you going to shoot as much with 300 Blackout, or do you just have a training gun with 223 that you can go shoot at or whatever? But 300 Blackout for patrol is certainly viable if your policy allows it, if your admin is on board with it. Keep in mind, ammunition is going to be a little bit more expensive, but there's tons of great duty loads for 300 Blackout, Hornady. I know Federal Spear is kind of working on some new stuff as well they're working on some stuff. So right now, I would really take a strong look at Hornady or Black Hills, but the Hornady 300 Blackout duty loads are performing pretty solid from what I've heard. So I'd definitely check that out. Second question, do you discourage the use of an aftermarket AR trigger when it comes to duty use? No, absolutely not. What I discourage the use of is garbage, okay? So don't put a cheap, crappy trigger in there. Likewise, don't put a trigger that is so light that it uses, lightweight springs or surfaces that compromise its reliability. So if it's marketed as like competition use only, that does not belong on a duty rifle. Good quality trigger, Hyperfire EDT, good bang for the buck. ALG QMS, the quality mil-spec trigger, great trigger for the buck. Geisley triggers, two-stage triggers are awesome. That's what I run in some of my rifles. The JP drop-ins are so far proving to be pretty good. The JP Easy triggers, I've ran those before, but the only thing with the Easy trigger is because of the lighter springs, I did run into some light strikes every now and again. So for a duty use, I am now kind of evaluating the JP one-piece drop-in. Otherwise, my go-to for duty triggers are the Hyperfire EDT if you're on a budget, QMS if you're on a stricter budget, otherwise the Geisley. And you can get the Geisley G2S for a very reasonable price. It's a great trigger. Otherwise the SSA or SSAE, depending on your policy for trigger pull weight, are kind of my jam. So I really do like those triggers. And then number 9, we already answered before. So we had 9 questions. I want to give away a prize. I don't know what the prize is. It's in literally a box. If you could see behind the scenes, it's a mess underneath here because I've been doing so many other projects with my kid and everything else. So I literally took it all off the counter and shoved it down there to make this episode because I wanted it to be perceived as a nice, clean, organized workspace, which it usually is. But, it is what it is. So, all right, let's go to random number generator. And our random number is number 5. So let me go back. Number 5 is Ben for the first 223 question. So Ben, we are going to get a prize off to you. Again, thank you very much to Rainier Arms and the Apex Club for sponsoring this. If you want to see your question on the show, the best way is to email us. The email address is shown below. That is theqa@gunsandtactics.com. Send us your questions. We want to answer them. We want it to be on the show. You can also leave comments. I love engaging with our viewers. If you have feedback, constructive criticism, non-constructive criticism, critical criticism, whatever it is, let me know. We want to hear from you. Thank you guys very much for watching, and have a great day. We work really hard to make content that we hope you as a shooter would enjoy. Subscribe to our channel, check out our featured videos and playlists, and if you have a question firearms related, go ahead and send an email to the address shown on the screen to be entered into our monthly QA series.